everybody, it's Patrick from Patrick & Friends Music Company, and today we're going to talk about finger picking for guitar. Now, fingerstyle guitar is something that you're going to come across at some point in your guitar journey, and some of you out there might actually prefer to play with your fingers over a pick. In this video, we're going to go over some tips and techniques to help you get started, and then go over some exercises to help you really practice your finger picking. Let's zoom in and get right to it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the notation that goes with each finger. So if you see fingerstyle guitar written down, you're going to see that a letter goes with each individual finger. Your thumb is P, index I, middle M, ring A, and pinky C. Now, obviously the letters don't match up with the words. That's because they actually stand for their Spanish translation. So the word for thumb in Spanish starts with the letter P. So we're going to be talking about classical technique and non-classical technique, and this is because there's a lot of stuff you can pick up from classical guitar players. They're expert fingerstyle guitar players and are really, really technical. Now, I bring this up first because one of the big things is that classical guitar musicians don't necessarily use their pinky very often or at all. And this is because they really play the melody a lot of times in their music and in their songs, and your pinky is going to have those higher strings which often have the melody. And the theory is that you don't want to use your weakest finger for the melody, you want your melody to be brought out by a stronger finger. Now, I think there's a lot of validity to this, and if you're playing the melody to a song or you have a part you really want to bring on the top strings, then you probably don't want to use your pinky because it's not going to be as loud or as prominent as your other fingers. However, if you're playing accompaniment or just some chords and you want to get some nicer voicings and add an extra string, your pinky can be really useful. So depending on your setting, I think this can really help. And you can kind of choose depending on how you're playing with your fingerstyle guitar. Let's get started playing. We're going to go with a little bit of classical techniques, so we're not going to use our pinky for now. We're going to start with our index finger on the G string, middle finger on the B string, and ring finger on the high E string. Then our thumb is going to be on the E, A, and D strings, so it's going to take care of those bottom three strings. For now, we're going to leave it on the low E string. So try playing those four strings together and then each individually. Now, see how that feels for you. And the number one thing that people have issue with is that their fingers can feel a little cramped, like they're running into each other. And this brings us to our first tip. And that is to create vertical space with each of your fingers. And this means space for each finger to move without knocking into or running into the finger above or below it. Now, to do this, we have to do a little technique called twisting the bottle or opening the bottle cap. What this means is like a motion of opening a bottle. You're going to put your hands on the guitar and then twist your fingers so that your thumb slightly is ahead of your other fingers, closer to the neck. This will create vertical space for each of your fingers so they can move without running into your other fingers. So try this. I think it'll really help you. Now, tip number 2 is to not pluck from underneath the string. We don't want to reach underneath the string and pluck up like that. It's going to create not the greatest sound in the world. It's actually going to slow down your fingers because your fingers are kind of getting caught with the strings. What you want to do is go across the string and slightly up. So kind of like a pick where you don't go up with the pick, you don't go from underneath the string, you go across, the same exact thing with your fingers. Tip number 3 is to deal with when you're playing a chord. And this is to move your thumb opposite of your other fingers. So they're kind of like closing together. And again, this is to create that sort of movement across the string rather than from underneath. It also allows you to play a little quicker and makes your chord sound a lot better. Now, tip number 4 is an important one, and that's to let your thumb do the bass note work. Your thumb is your strongest finger, and it can play, bass lines, and also bring out those lower and lower notes. Now, this is actually more important than just for sound. It's actually to really help you get started. And what I mean is if your thumb takes care of the low strings, so say the E, A, and D strings, and then your index on the G, middle on the B, ring on the high E, or if you use your pinky, you shift all your fingers, it lets your other fingers just stay on a string and lets your thumb worry about all those other notes. That means that when you come across, a song with a note on the G string, you're going to use your index finger. A song with a note on the high E string, you're going to use your ring finger for that. And this creates just less confusion with your fingers and less movement with your fingers, so you only really have to worry about coordinating your thumb rather than all of your fingers. Now, tip number 5 is actually to grow some fingernails. And this may sound like a weird tip, but it actually makes a big difference in your sound. It makes your sound more present, and if you feel like you're getting a more muffled sound, that's probably because you need a little bit of fingernails. Now you don't have to go crazy. Classic guitar players kind of do go crazy with this in a good way. They really shape their fingernails, they file their fingernails a specific way to really get the best sound out of their guitar. Now all you have to do is grow a little bit of nail and that'll really make a big difference. However, if this is not an option for you, what you can do is get finger picks, which are little picks that you slide on your fingers, and they again create that sort of pick sound with each of your fingers and can make your sound a lot more present. Now let's take these tips and put them into practice. We're going to be going over this practice exercise and pattern to really help you get your fingerstyle guitar down. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a specific right hand pattern or left hand pattern if you're a lefty. So the pattern's going to be thumb, index, middle, ring. And for this, you're going to put your thumb on your low 3 strings, index on the G, middle on the B, and ring on that high E. We're going to play this pattern 3 times, and what you're going to do is you're going to move your thumb to different strings each time. So your thumb's going to start on the low E string and play thumb, index, middle, ring. Second time, it's going to move to the A string, do the same thing. Then move your thumb to the D string and do the same thing. Now let's see what happens when we put this all together. As you can see, my thumb's doing the bass note work and I'm leaving my other fingers on those strings. Now, when you play these exercises, you want a nice consistent tone, tempo, and dynamics. You want to really keep it even, and this is because you want full control of your strings and your fingers. You know, you want to practice this way because maybe in a song that you might encounter, you do want to bring out a specific string, but you want to have full control over that. You don't want to accidentally do it one way or the other. So we're going to keep with the same exercise, but now we're going to play a different pattern. Now we're going to play thumb, middle, index, ring. Again, we're going to play it 3 times, moving the thumb from the E, A to the D string. So for the last exercise, we're going to play 2 strings together. We're going to play the thumb and the middle finger together. So the low strings and then the B string. Then we're going to play the index finger on the G and then ring finger on the high E. Now to keep it in 4/4, we're going to hold that last note, the high E string with your ring finger, for 2 beats, so just a little longer, so that we can stay in 4/4. So again, we're going to play the pattern 3 times. First time E with your thumb, then A, and then D. So now we're going to bring our pinky on, and we're going to play a chord. We're going to play an A minor chord. For this, we're going to put our thumb on the A string, index on the D, middle on the G, ring finger on the B string, and then our pinky on the high E string. We're going to play all 5 strings together, and then play each individually, going from our thumb to our high E string, and then back down to our thumb. Let's see what this sounds like. Awesome. Again, you may notice that pinky's a little weaker than your other fingers, so you really got to build up that pinky strength. Now we're going to set up an E minor chord, and for this, we're going to have our thumb on the low E string. We're going to skip the A string, have our index on the D, middle on the G, ring on the B, and pinky on the high E string. Now we're going to play those 5 strings together, skipping the A string. However, when we pluck out our chord with each string individually, we're actually going to play all 6 strings. We're going to move our thumb starting on the low E string, then move down to the A string, then play each finger up to the high E string, going back down to hit your A string with your thumb, and then move your thumb down to the low E string. Let's see what this sounds like. Now really practice these tips and techniques to really get your finger picking down so that when you come across a song where you need to use your fingers, you're already got that foundational technique down. Now I hope to see you in the next video, but in the meantime, happy practicing.